Good morning, good morning. Yes, I said good morning. I pulled out some eggs this morning because I had a feeling that I wanted to have 2 boiled eggs. I rarely eat meat, but today I felt like 2 boiled eggs. Come to find out, when I made my eggs weren't any good. Now, I always thought eggs had a relatively long shelf life. I don't remember when I bought these eggs, but I'm checking the expiration date, and the expiration date tells me that the eggs are old. Now, I grew up in a household where checking the expiration date was not something we did regularly. Expiration dates were nothing more than suggestions, but these are telling me that they are from the end of 2020. So now I have to figure out what I'm going to do with these eggs. I even had some Eggland's Best eggs. As you can see here, the white ones are Eggland's Best. The brown ones are the original carton that you see in front of you. I've got to do something with these eggs other than throw them in the garbage. So after doing some research online, looking at some YouTube videos, I've come to the conclusion that I can bury these eggs in the garden, fingers crossed that I don't cause any issues or draw any pests into the garden with these eggs. I not only have 1 carton, I have 2. So I have 2 dozen eggs I'm going to need to do something with. I have several new pots that I have created or refreshed for the fall, and I'm going to take at least 1 of these cartons and try and put them in the garden. And again, fingers crossed, arms crossed, toes crossed, everything crossed, that I don't ruin my garden by putting these eggs in there. What I'm trying to accomplish is homemade fertilizer. So join me in the garden and let's see if I can get this working for the fall. Before I start burying these eggs, I have a little bit of dead debris off of several plants that I'm going to clean up. It's important to clean your plants up to make sure that you're not bringing in unnecessary pests or disease. So I'm just going to take these few leaves off before I start burying my eggs. Now that I did a little cleanup, it's time to start putting in the eggs. This is the first carton I'm going to use. I also have some lime that I'm going to place on top of the egg once I've buried it. Now I'm going to take my trowel and I'm going to dig as far down as I possibly can, not quite going to the bottom of the pot, but going a little bit further than the middle of the pot if I can. I'm going to go as far down as my trowel can take me. Once I think I've gotten down pretty far, I'm going to take the soil, push it back, take an egg, drop the egg in the soil, take a handful of lime after I've cracked the egg, of course, and place a handful of lime on top of that cracked egg, and then I'm going to cover it back up with the soil. I'm going to repeat this process many more times. Depending on the size of the pot, I'll put 2 to 3 or even just 1 egg. I want to make sure that I am adequately dispersing the fertilizer, the homemade fertilizer, so that the plants can absorb and these pots will be refreshed and ready to go for all the fall goodness that I plan on sowing. This container is large enough for me to place 2 eggs, actually 3, but I'm only going to put 2 since this is an experiment. So again, I'm going to dig the hole as far as my trowel can go. I'm going to drop the egg in, crack it, place the lime on top, and cover it back up. Rinse and repeat. This is a 5-gallon bucket I'm going to use. I'm going to place the egg straight down the center. I'm going all the way down as far as I can go, repeating the same process I just mentioned. Can you guys see it? Crack that egg. Add some lime and cover it back up. I'm going to repeat the process in this container as well. I'm not going to say what I'm going to do because you guys have seen me do it twice already. So I'm going to let you watch. So here we go. You guys see that volunteer tomato right in the middle? It's late in the season. I don't have any idea why this tomato feels like it's a good time to show up to the party. I have several pots in the garden that I'm going to be sewing up for the fall. This is that 5-gallon bucket that I just put an egg in. I have made some homemade stakes of what I'm going to sow. So I'm going to place these stakes in the pots where I'm going to be sowing my seeds. That way I know what's in it. And after that, I'll be sowing. So in this pot, I have placed a stake for some premier kale. So this pot is going to consist of, hopefully, fingers crossed, some kale. If you've ever sown brassica seeds, you'll know that all brassica seeds look exactly alike. They're tiny little brownish reddish balls. Once I've sown them, as you've seen here, I'm just going to pat down the soil to just make sure that they've fallen under the soil a little bit, and then I'll move on to the next pot. My hopes is this pot is going to be jam-packed full of goodness. I've already placed my stakes in the back so that you know exactly what I'm going to be sowing, and I know what I put here. The first thing I'm going to sow are these brown mustard seeds. I got these when I went home to visit my family from the Asian store. I've never had brown mustard seeds before, so this will be my first time. I'm hoping that I'll get a really nice harvest. I put a few extra seeds just in case some didn't germinate. So the first row is brown mustard seed. The next row of seeds are purple 7-top turnips. I've had these seeds for quite a long time. I tried growing them back in 2012. To be honest with you, I don't know what the results were because it's been a long time. So I'm going to try to grow them again, and I am sowing them like I just sowed the brown mustard. The third seed I'm going to sow is the Georgia collard. I have some seeds floating around in the bag, so I'm just going to scoop up a few seeds and sprinkle them as I did the other 2 rows of seed. Now this seed is very old. I've had it, I want to say, since 2012. I hope it grows. We shall see. This seed is supposed to be just the turnip tops. I don't know whether or not there is such thing as just turnip tops, but we're going to see. And I hope I didn't mix those two seeds up between the collards and the turnip tops, but either way, it's either the turnip tops or the collards. They're all in here, guys. This last seed is an Indian mustard. It's very old, like the last 3 seeds I mentioned, so I'm going to sow them in hopes that I get some germination. Now let's move on to some kohlrabi. I have 2 cloth pots over here. I'm going to take this first cloth pot and split it down the middle. On one side, I'm going to sow the green or the white Vienna, as you see that I just showed you. And on the other side, I am going to sow the purple Vienna. So let's sow the white Vienna. I am very much looking forward to eating all this luscious food this fall. Now let me sow the purple Vienna on the other half of the bag. Here we are with some very old Brussels sprouts. I'm going to place it in this pot right here that has some chives living at the front of it. Now this seed is very old. I want to say it could be from 2012 or 2017. I'm going to give it a go anyway. I have a packet of bunching onions that's relatively old. Again, that's the theme of the day. So I am going to place these bunching onions in between my rolls of greens in this pot in the hopes that I can get a significant amount of bunching onions this fall. I have about 2 or 3 more newer packet of bunching onions, and I may end up putting some of those in the garden in other pots as well. Onions not only taste good, they also deter some insects. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm also putting some bunching onions in the 2 5-gallon pots next to this pot over on the left. I'm spreading the love around. I have some leek seeds that I harvested from last year. I only have a few, so in this cloth pot, I am going to sow these leek seeds. I hope I get some leeks so that I can at least let a couple go to seed, and I can then have more seeds for next year. I have sown all the seeds that I am going to sow for today. It's getting quite warm outside. The sun has moved overhead, and it's time for me to go inside. So I'm going to take some worm castings and some baby worms out of my worm tower and place them in all of the containers that I have sown seeds in today. I want to make sure that I am getting as much homegrown fertilizer as I possibly can to give everything that I've sown the best possible start. Did you guys see how nice and deep and luscious looking these worm castings are? I am so excited about worm castings these days. I can't wait to get harvest each and every time I grow something. I honestly believe that these worms are the powerhouse in the garden. I used to be apprehensive when it came to spreading worm castings in the garden. I didn't want to put any of my worms from the worm tower into the garden. And then I said to myself, that's silly. Use the worm castings, put them worms in the garden. You don't need to use a lot of fresh worm castings, but you can pretty much guarantee that with each and every handful I fling, there are baby worms and worm eggs, and each pot at some point will have their own colony. Now that all the fertilizing is done, it is time to give everything a really nice deep drink of water. The water is going to activate the seeds, and that's what's going to get everything popping. Take a look at the slow motion of water. Doesn't it look amazing? Watering your newly sown seeds, the possibility of what's going to come up, and the idea that one day soon you're going to be eating. I don't know about you, but it just fills my heart with joy. Once I finish watering, I am going to top up each and every pot as well as grow bag that I've sown in today with wood chip to make sure that all this beautiful water is going to stay in the pot and keep these seedlings nice and moist. I will check them every day, but once you top things up with a mulch, it makes sure that the moisture stays in a lot longer. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and that you found some inspiration to get out in your garden and plant something for fall. And if you have, put some information in the description box below and let me know what you'll be planting. I'll be interested in finding out if you're growing the same things I am. I appreciate you all for watching, commenting, sharing, and most of all, subscribing. I hope you enjoyed today, and I'll see you in the next one.